look at what might be developed. So, welcome everybody. Most remiss of me, I didn't introduce the Lord Mayor. So welcome, Lord Mayor. Thanks for giving up some time again to Bea Owls for the AGM, and I hope you're able to say a few words to us.
Yes, I am able to. And can I say thank you so much for having me again. But first of all, can I say hello to each and every one of you? Give me a wave. Give me a wave. Lovely. It's absolutely nice to see you. And watching the film, it makes me happy. It makes me sad. Because we're here to talk about the elders. And we do know that the pandemic hit the elders worse than any others. A couple of the ladies mentioned that they are living on their own, and that is always my concern for the vulnerable who are on their own, and during the day they only see maybe one faces. But what I can say to you, hang in there, because we will make it. We've got this far, and I'm sure we will. But what I'm saying is, Leeds is a city that wants everyone to grow old graciously. And if you look around Leeds, there's so many things for the elders. We've got benches, we've got parks, beautiful green spaces, which I wouldn't advise you to go at this moment because you have to be careful where you go and how you do things. But if pandemic haven't just come, it teaches us a lot of things. It teaches us not to take things for granted. It teaches us where we was too comfortable in our own skin and zone. So now we have to look out of the box and look at things different. Last year when I came to you, I said, age is a number. Pick an age and stick to that number. And I'm sure you did, because if you didn't, you'll be more deteriorated in this pandemic. You are lonely, you are isolated, but you've got your health and strength, and that's the most thing that important. So my advice to you is, after the pandemic, those that mobile, please do not sit at home. Go for a walk, integrate with each other. During the pandemic, you've learned Zoom, else we wouldn't be here today. So that's something new. You're never too old to have a new career. Do something. Just in case, a gentleman mentioned earlier, if the pandemic should return in time of your life, you are prepared for it and you're more equipped. This time we wasn't equipped for it, but we fight and go with the best we can. So I just want to say thank you and thank the third sectors for what they are doing. I anonymously praise our third sectors. There's emails from my office to the councillors to recommend third sectors in their ward, and I do hope that they put you forward, because Bramley, you're doing absolutely a marvelous job, not just you, across the city. Since we lift back out and I can do a few engagement, it's amazing what the city has come together and do. We drove in, we walk in, we jumped the sea, and we are swimming together. And I'm sure we're going to be ashore together. So enjoy yourself today. No buns, no cakes, no dancing, but I do hope you have a cup of tea near you wherever you're sitting down. And hopefully, not the AGM, but I might able to come and see you at some point when the pandemic go, which I'm looking forward to. So stay safe, look after each other, phone those who you can phone, and communicate the best way you can, because that's the only thing going to get us through this pandemic. Communication. Keep smiling and just do what we are doing. Thank you for having me.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, for those uplifting words. Now, our next guest is Rachel Reeves. Is Rachel online?
Yes, I am, Stuart.
Hello, Rachel. Over to you.
Well, thank you very much, Stuart, and thank you, Lord Mayor, for coming to speak to us at Bramley Elderly Action today. We really appreciate it, and I think it ever since I've been involved in Bramley Elderly Action, which is probably about 12 or 13 years now, the Lord Mayor has always come and spoke at the AGM, and I think it speaks of how highly regarded the neighbourhood networks, and particularly Bramley Elderly Action, is across our city. I was also very struck by the film that we just watched, and the experience of older people across the West Leeds constituency, but today particularly thinking about the older people in Bramley, and on all the areas that Bramley Elderly Action and Owls support. I think one of the things that this pandemic and this crisis really has shown us is the things that matter most in our lives. And for most of us, it is our family and our closest friends, the people that we love, and the places that we live. And we've had to spend so much more time in such a small, narrow environment that actually where we live, we realise has such a huge impact. And I think we're very lucky in Bramley, as one of the men in the video spoke of. It is a strong, tight-knit community. And I think through the work that Bramley Elderly Action, but also Barker have done over the last few months to support people to stay safe in their homes, but also tackling the blights of loneliness and social isolation, I think it speaks volumes about the community that we live in, and the desire to look out for others. But some of the things that we've seen during the pandemic as well have brought out the best, I think, in society, including in Bramley, knocking on neighbours' doors to see if they need anything from the shops when we're going, asking if people need help getting prescriptions, for example, phoning people up who you might not have spoken to for many months because you're concerned about them and their well-being. Those little things, going the extra mile, I hope that we don't lose that when finally this pandemic is over, because those small acts of kindness, I think, make such a difference to people's lives. And I've seen that directly during this crisis. One of the things that I launched a few months ago was Leeds West Local Heroes, and I asked people to nominate people who had been heroes, and there was a nomination and a winner from Bramley Elderly Action. But the point is that I received so many letters and emails and phone calls about heroes in our community, people who are going the extra mile, whether that was cooking hot meals for neighbours, doing the shops, making sure that people were okay, and also the work that Bramley Elderly Action staff and volunteers and board members have done over the last few months. It's been really hard not to have the activities that Bramley Elderly Action put on, and I know that they make such a difference to people's lives, and not to have those. But the extra work that Bramley Elderly Action have done I went to the Morrisons in the Swinnow with some Bramley Elderly Action and Bramley Care Bear volunteers to do the shopping for people who were not able to get out. And the fact that it wasn't just a generic food shop of things that Bramley Elderly Action thought you might need, but actually asking members what they needed from the shops and doing that for them, and making sure that they got not just fed, but the meals and the food that they wanted, going that extra mile to make sure that people's personal individual needs were met. I also wanted today to say a huge thank you to two very special people who have done so much for Bramley Elderly Action over the last few years, and that is Stuart Quin, who's been the chair of Bramley Elderly Action for a number of years now, and also Councillor Caroline Gruen, who's been vice chair. Both of them are standing down at this AGM, and I think, as your patron, on behalf of everyone at Bramley Elderly Action, the staff, the board, the volunteers, the users of the service, I want to say a huge thank you for everything you've done to enrich and make better the lives of people in our community. So usually I think I would present an award to you now and give you a big hug. I can't do either of those things, but just to say a huge thank you, Stuart and Caroline, and I know you'll stay involved both in Bramley Elderly Action and in the wider community, but you're stepping back from those huge roles that you've taken on over the last 2 years, and we can't thank you enough for your service. And I hope in better times we will be able to meet and thank you properly for everything you've done. But both of you are going to be really tough acts to follow, so thank you for everything you've put into our charity and our community. Thank you.
Thank you, Rachel.
We can see people joining in. So thank you very much. And I think you know, and I hope you know, how much we appreciate everything that you've done. Lee Ingham also wanted me to just say something about some of the wider things that we might want to do to build back better in Bramley after this crisis. And I think it sort of goes without saying, really, that there are some obvious areas where we need to be more resilient as a country and as a community, particularly, I would say, in terms of the treatment of the elderly. And at the beginning of this crisis, when we saw people released back into care homes with coronavirus, where care homes didn't have the proper personal protective equipment and clothing that they needed, and the number of people who died in social care. And I expect that most of us on this call can think of somebody, a family member, somebody in our street, a friend who has been touched in some way by the high number of deaths, including in care homes that we've seen. And we need to make sure that we learn lessons of this crisis and we don't go back to business as usual after this crisis. And that means fixing the social care crisis in our country. And it also means properly funding for the long term, both the NHS and social care, that is there for all of us in our darkest moments and those most important moments in all of our lives. And we need to make sure that it is fit for the challenges that we know we're going to face in the future, but also resilient in the face of the sorts of shocks that we have experienced recently. But on a day-to-day basis, many of you will know that loneliness is an issue that's very close to my heart. And I chaired the Jo Cox Commission, Jo Cox Loneliness Commission for a year with a friend and colleague of mine, another MP who stood down at the last election, Seema Kennedy. And we saw during that inquiry and that commission the impact that loneliness has on the young and on the old, but particularly at the moment. I think we think about the older people in our communities who may be struggling with multiple health conditions, may not have friends and family living nearby, and have been particularly isolated during this crisis. And I hope, as well as tackling the big challenges we have in the NHS and social care, we also put our minds to ensuring that everybody is properly supported in our community on a day-to-day basis with the challenges in social isolation and loneliness. And that really is what Bramley Elderly Action, all of the staff and the volunteers and everybody who joins and gets involved with Bramley Elderly Action wants to achieve: a life less lonely, where we have more and more meaningful interactions with others, where we feel valued and have an opportunity to give something back as well. And I'm really pleased that from the conversations I've had with Lee this week and from the video that I've just seen and that commitment at the end to ensure that from the new year, more services are available at Bramley Elderly Action, whatever the virus brings, that we do everything we can to ensure that people are not struggling more than they absolutely have to during these terrible times, and that we build something better back in Bramley, better for older people, better for younger people, better together in our local community. So thank you very much for having me to come and speak today. It's been a really challenging and a difficult year, but I hope we can learn some lessons to build a better future. Thanks very much, Stuart. Thank you, Lee.
Thank you, Rachel, for those kind words. And I'm sure you'll continue to play a really important part in the work of BEA over the next few years. So thank you very much indeed. Can we move on with let me formally welcome everybody to this meeting. This is my swan song, not only as chair and member of the board, but it's also Caroline Gruen's swan song. We're both being released from service, as it were. I think it might be appropriate just to take a few minutes if Caroline wants to say a few words. Over to you, Caroline, if you want to.
Thank you, Stuart. I don't want to take a lot of time up because I'm sure everybody at the meeting has got a lot of things they want to say. But I really did want to take two seconds just to say to you, thank you. I've done 8 years actually on the board, and I'm sure most of you know that the term of office is actually 6 years. And I was asked on 2 occasions to extend that by a year so that we have some continuity on the board. And on both occasions, I was very pleased to accept. But I think after 8 years, the time has come to stand down and make way for somebody younger and fresher. But what a journey it's been. It's been such a learning journey for me. I have learned so much by working with you. Some of you know that my background is lies with education and learning that children do. It has been fascinating to learn with the members of Bramley Elderly Action. The first thing I learned was that you're never too old to learn something new, something that Lord Mayor touched on. I also learned a little bit about what it's like living alone as an elderly person, perhaps in a flat where you don't have access to a garden and you're not terribly mobile, and the sort of loneliness that that can bring, and how important a smile, a joke, a telephone conversation, some kind of contact, a good old cup of tea, what a difference those things can make to people living in those circumstances. And of course, over the 8 years that I've been on the board, I've also come into the age group that would be legitimate to join Bramley Elderly Action. And I was reminded that I was getting older for the first time when we were at Bramley Festival. And somebody from the Bramley Elderly Action stall approached me and said, are you interested in becoming a member? So that made me realise that I'm getting more in common with you guys. I've learned a lot too about living with dementia, which is interesting. My mother-in-law also has dementia, and it's helped me a great deal to have that insight into members who are courageously living with that very independently, and that has filled me with respect. So I'll just leave you with the thought that, first of all, thank you so much for having me on the board for this length of time. I hope I've made a little bit of a difference. But the most important thing that I've learned from Bramley Elderly Action is how enjoyable it is to have afternoon tea, because I hadn't done that for years before I joined Bramley Elderly Action. And of course, that's what we should all be doing now. So here's to the next afternoon tea when this virus is well and truly over. Bye.
Thank you, Caroline, for those words. Can we move on? Apologies for absence. I have 5, Linda Craven, Julie Botham, Anne Gibbs, David Wilford and Ali Kay. Are there any other apologies for absences that want to be recorded? That anybody knows? No? Okay. Next item on the agenda is we should just out of respect have a minute's silence for those 79 members who have passed away over the past 12 months. And I'd like you now, if you could, just to remember them. Thank you. Thank you very much. Can we move on to the next item, please, which is the minutes of last year's AGM on the 19th of October. Has everybody got minutes? Who wants to have minutes? Can we go through, first of all, for accuracy, please? Page 1. Page 2. Page 3. And page 4. Are there any matters arising from the minutes not covered elsewhere on the agenda that anybody wants to raise? No? Okay, thank you. Can we accept those minutes as a true record of last year's meeting? All those in favour? Show of hands, please. Thank you. Anybody against? Show of hands, please. Can't see anybody. Thank you very much. Moving on to item 5, over to David Hastings, if he's still with us, from far away. David, do you want to just take us through the report and accounts for last year?
Yes, thank you very much, Stuart. This, of course, the accounts, as you will see, are to the 31st of March 2020. So they don't, in fact, reflect the difficulties that we've had from the pandemic. And the accounts, in fact, look extremely healthy. Fortunately, thanks to great support from Leeds City Council, we are continuing in a strong vein, and we have made some substantial progress, I feel, in the last few financial years. I think that most people will have copies of pages 7 and 8 of our full accounts. The rest of the accounts include all sorts of notes and trustees report. But if we look at the statement of financial activities, it includes on page 7 our income and expenditure. And there is a comparison to the previous year, 2019. You will see that grants will have increased substantially. From 337,000 to 426,000. Everything else in terms of income is relatively stable, fortunately. But the big increase has come from mainly Leeds City Council, but also from the lottery. We received a substantial grant from the lottery, which enabled us to tackle a project in the Owls area in Headingley and surrounding areas. So you will see that our income has increased by £87,000 during the last financial year. However, we have managed to spend what we have been given because we have employed more people to work in the community, and we have also used the funds for increasing the activity of Bramley Elderly Action to try and cover more activities, etc. So that shows that the expenditure has also gone up substantially, but we were left with in my terms, because I was a businessman with my own business, I am happy to report a profit of £2,155, which is called a surplus in charitable terms. So our funds carried forward have increased by that £2,000. The total, if anyone wants to see it, is 178,000, which we are carrying forward. On the second sheet, page 8, this is where people will perhaps have noticed a substantial difference in our balance sheet, and mainly because of one major item which we have undertaken. Lee suggested some time ago, Lee and Fran, that we should look to a property in the Headingley area to try and expand our services and attract more members in that particular area. And an opportunity arose to buy a fairly large shop and some attached flats or accommodation which we could let out. Looking at all of the financials, the Finance Committee and Board decided that this would be a great move ahead for Bramley Elderly Action. So we purchased this property. So our assets look very substantial, but of course, having purchased it, we did borrow the money to do so. So our liabilities also increased. But we feel as a board and as a management team that this will make a substantial difference, both to owls who are going to work from these premises, and also open it up to when COVID allows us to attract people in to have all sorts of activities there. So I hope that all of the members of BEA and Owls will agree that we have made a substantial difference, and we will look over the next few years to making great use of this facility and, of course, Bramley Community Centre and Bramley Lawn. I am open to questions, so please, if anyone has any questions, I will do my best to answer them. And if I can't, then I'm sure Lee will be able to.
Are there any questions for David on the accounts? No? Is that right? Sorry.
I guess one of the things that it might be helpful to do is to sort of differentiate between the Bramley Elderly Action and Owls. I mean, at the top of the sheet, it talks about Bramley Elderly Action, so it isn't as clear that it is it's covering both organisations. And I don't understand quite how they're constituted, if it's actually all part of the same thing, or if there are two separate entities that are working together as a joint venture.
Yeah, we are two separate entities, but Owls is under the control of the BEA board. Owls does not have its own board, but it has its own set of accounts, and also has, and they are combined into a joint statement of the financial affairs of Bramley Elderly Action and Owls. But they have separate management, although Lee and Fran, of course, work very closely with both of the managers of the two schemes.
I think it's also fair to say, Julie, that it's one entity, it's one company. So for the purposes of the accounts, that's what's being presented.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Are there any other questions on the accounts for 2019-20?
I would like to ask, it's an Al's question again. What happened to the became of the yellow bus that seemed to fail that Al's had at some point?
Is that one for you, Lee?
Yeah, we lost the yellow bus to the floods in the Boxing Day floods, and we've got a new one on the way, which I think Fran's going to speak about later on. But
Yeah, thank you.
Must be. I'll be honest with you, it took a while to replace it, but it is on its way. So we'll you're right to ask that question, Ken. Yeah.
Okay, thank you for that. Are there any other questions on the accounts? Okay, can we accept them and approve them as the accounts for 2019-20? All those in favour? Could you raise your hands, please? Is there anybody against? No? Okay, thank you. Those are carried. Next item, item number 6, is to ask you to approve the appointment of the independent examiner, Paul Cowan, who has done the accounts for this year and for several years in the past. Can I have a proposer, please, for the appointment of Paul Cowan as the independent examiner? Thank you, David. Seconded? Thank you, Barbara. All those in favour? Thank you. Anybody against? Okay, thank you. Those are carried. We come now to item 7, which is the appointment of the trustees for the following, for next year. So we have Jane Dawson, Laura Elson, David Hastings, Toby Parsons and Brendan Peacock. And I think you should all have had little bios to explain their backgrounds. Can I have a proposer and a seconder for the appointment of the trustees, please? Thank you, Barbara. And a seconder? Thank you. All those in favour of the appointment of the trustees? Anybody against? Thank you. Those are carried. Can we move now on to the operational reports?
Stuart, could I just say something?
Oh, sorry. Sorry, Barbara, go on.
It would be nice, I think, seeing as we get quite a lot of our money from the council, if one of the other two councils were invited onto the board.
Thank you, Barbara. I think that matter has been discussed at the board, and whilst it's now not a matter for me, I'm sure that the existing trustees have that fully in their sights.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions on the election of trustees? Okay, thank you.
If I could say something, Stuart.
Sorry, go on, mate. Yep.
Is that we are looking to strengthen the board with a member from, so a member and a user of services for both Bramley Elderly Action and Owls. And so we are on with that, and we thought we might have somebody for this meeting, but unfortunately that didn't happen. So we do want to strengthen within that area. That's something that the board's committed to, and something that we're on with. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Lee. Right, can we move on to item number 8, the operation report? Can we kick off with Fran, please? I think has got a report to you for a few minutes. Fran, are you there? Fran? No, she's not there.
I think she was asking for the screen. She's having a trouble with the screen.
She's
Hello,
there
everyone.
now.
All right. Yeah, you are. Right. Okay. Are you ready to roll?
Ready to roll.
Okay, over to you.
Let me try and share this. Here we go. Right, hello everybody. Can you see some slides on a screen? Just give me a thumbs up if you can. Thank you, brilliant. Okay, so this is the operational report for 2019 to 2020. It's been a busy year. At our last AGM, we were 6 months into a new management structure, which was put in place to improve services and make a bigger impact. We celebrated 25 years of BEA, and here's us at our tea party. And we celebrated 5 years of Bramley Lawn. By March 2020, we'd made some really good progress on our goals for the year. As a direct result, we were performing better within budget, and more members were taking part in Bramley Elderly Action activities than in previous years. There was still room for improvement. We always know that. With the assistance of volunteer team, we continued to run 29 regular social activities, Monday to Sunday, with services only ever stopping as much as humanly possible for public holidays. BEA volunteers contributed 19,000 hours of time to support this work, which equates to £281,000 worth of time. BEA members travelled 14,000 miles on the minibuses. The new minibus the replacement minibus that we announced at the last AGM has just this last week actually rolled off the production line. It was delayed because of the pandemic, but we're hoping to get it very soon. And when it arrives, we're going to invite some members to have a ride around the area on our new socially distanced minibus. Alongside the regular activities last year, we also trialled some new ways to encourage older people to join in with activities, and we had some good progress in that regard. We launched some new special events that were led by some of you and some of our members. In particular, who can forget Bramley Elderly Action's first variety night? And if you were there, you will remember the Men's Day performance to the YMCA. That's one I'm never going to forget, absolutely amazing. Behind the scenes, we streamlined our systems and tried to do things better. We expanded our learning and training opportunities, not just within the staff team for everybody. So for example, we ran some public information sessions on safeguarding, on dementia, and we were about to run a public information session on mental health awareness. And some of our staff visited other neighbourhood network schemes to learn from them. Our volunteer befriending scheme, led by Maureen, continued to grow, and we continue to see how valuable a service it is, both for the befriendees and for the befrienders, the volunteers ringing people. We think everybody involved gets something out of that relationship. Our supported wellbeing project, led by Julie, continued to reduce severe social isolation and helped people overcome some personal challenges, some mental health challenges too, to make more friends within the BEA community. We started running some new activities, a walking football team in partnership with Your Backyard, and we secured 10k funding to run IT computer classes, led by Tony. We also created a computer resource room at Bramley Community Centre. As custodians of Bramley Community Centre, we were able to host a range of groups for all ages, and we worked quite hard to establish new partnerships locally, so that the community centre, as opposed to BEA, the community centre could run its own activities for children, young people and others during half terms, holidays, etc. One highlight for me was that there was a really nice coming together of Bramley Elderly Action and the community centre, whereby Bramley Elderly Action members volunteered to run a Santa's Grotto at the Bramley Christmas Fair. That meant that 90 local children were able to meet Santa affordably, because Christmas is a very expensive time for some people, isn't it? As BCC, as Bramley Community Centre became busy, and it did start to get really busy by the end of the year, we started work on a refurbishment plan and working with an architect to try and improve the facilities and increase the community space that's available. And we will be resuming work on that project as soon as it's practical to do so. At Owls, members enjoyed regular groups and services, including lunch clubs. I'd say one of the city's only Caribbean lunch clubs, which is fantastic. Exercise classes, shopping services, and special events. The Owls men's group is really notable. In the last year, the numbers really grew, and it's very, very well attended, and a great way for older men to have company and banter. Owls also continue to support a community cafe that runs at Heart in Headingley. It's run for years and years. It's changed locations. It's a great place called Rose's Tea Bar, and Owls is really proud to represent the organisation on the community committee that runs that regular weekly cafe. It's become a great example of older people helping other older people to get together. And prior to COVID, was fast becoming the talk of the town, a real hotspot. Other highlights of Owls this year include a new intergenerational singing group that Catherine set up, and some great work by our community builder, Joanne, to match older people in the area with local volunteering opportunities, including events like Park Run at Woodhouse Moor. Overall, it was a year of, I'd say, quite intensive hard work behind the scenes to improve what we do. And although cut off in its prime by COVID, we felt we had rung in many good changes and were poised to take things to the next level. From March 2020 to now, things have changed pretty dramatically, obviously. The arrival of COVID changed almost everything, but it hasn't changed our appetite to make life better for local older people. We responded to COVID and lockdown by pausing our face-to-face activities and introducing some new essential services, e.g. A shopping delivery service, which you've heard a little bit about, phone befriending, online activities, and during the summer, we ran some face-to-face groups, particularly outdoors where it was safe to do so. I'm just sharing a photo now, actually, of some of the shopping team who've been shopping for people every week since lockdown and are continuing to do so. They're absolute heroes, they really are. BEA staff and volunteers, described now as key workers, made it possible for us to keep going even in really challenging circumstances. A huge thank you to all of those people, and there's a lot of people who've been involved. Thank you. Here's a little taste of what we've been doing during lockdown and some numbers. So 40 BEA members joined Phone a New Friend, which is ongoing. It's our scheme to match older people with other older people for a weekly chat on the phone. It continues to be a lifeline for some people, and we're asking all of our members who can to help us with this, to get involved. We've delivered an estimated 3,000 shops from Morrison's to people's doors to keep them in supplies. 137 people have been on phone befriending, meaning they get a weekly phone call and a really nice chat and a listening ear from some absolutely standout volunteers. Some of you are in the room today. We estimate the staff have made around about 5,000 support phone calls over this period. I've underestimated. There's been a lot of support by phone and some really good work in that regard. We've lent out iPads and Alexas to people to try and enable more of our members to get online, and we've provided IT support by phone to help with that. We're running now some online groups to get people together, and we're also running some small, safe face-to-face groups wherever we can, including a walking group, walking football, and we've been running backyard bingo sessions around the area this summer. During this time, we also, within the staff team, we promoted the role of team leader to team manager and recruited a new team manager at BEA. So Claire on the call today is our BEA team manager, responsible for day-to-day activities there. And we promoted Catherine Skibbington to the Owls team manager. Really pleased about that. At the time of writing this or speaking to you, we're planning to try and run some small supportive groups this autumn for our most isolated members in safe local venues, subject to infection rates. We want to try and get people together, but in a safe way. We're starting new online groups for the winter, including a book group, a crafty chat, and also a letter writing pen pal scheme, alongside the Zoom activities that we're already doing each week. And you'll have details of those in your latest newsletter. Please come and get involved. We'd love you to. And look out for news soon about an armchair Winter Olympics and some distanced Christmas activities, including a Christmas food shopping service. So all in all, we know now, don't we, the future's pretty hard to predict, but what we do know is we're determined to keep making the best of this situation. And from January 2021, we will be starting work on some changes to the work we do in order to enable more older people to enjoy friendship, opportunities and happiness through BEA. That's my report. thank you to everyone involved in making a good year of it at BEA and Owls. Would anybody like to ask anything?
Thank you, Fran.
Sorry.
There will be another opportunity to ask questions a bit later on. If anybody wants to think of something a bit later. Right, I just want to say a few words before I hand over to Lee about the past year or so. I think the first thing I should say, and I'm echoing comments made by Fran and by Caroline and by Rachel, which is a huge thank you to our funders, to our volunteers and to the staff who have together pulled really the rabbit out of the hat this year. It has, as Fran said, been a very difficult time, and I think so far we've come through it with flying colours. So what I have to say as my swan song really is that I was never expecting this. If you'd have asked me this time last year whether we'd be having a Zoom AGM, I'd have looked at you with some incredulity. However, here we are. It's had a major effect, and as Fran said, we've had to recalibrate how services have been delivered, but everybody stepped up to the plate, and I'm hopeful, even though I won't be involved, that next year we'll see a return to some form of normality. The organisation as a whole has advanced a number of projects before COVID occurred, and I think the board take the view that in the longer run these will help underpin a continuation and growth of the services that we provide to the 2,000 odd members of the organisation. As David remarked, we've made our first property acquisition in North Lane in Headingley. We'll become Owls' HQ. We'll provide a high street presence for members to drop in and for staff to use and for small functions as well as an office space. We had to do some renovations and some alterations, but I think those are just about completed now. And as has been remarked before, we're expecting a new minibus in the new year, thanks mainly to a legacy from a former member who sadly passed away. That in itself will enable a lot more shopping trips and other trips to be made. My final point is that all of our services and initiatives couldn't really take place without the continuing support of the City Council and other funding bodies such as the National Lottery. So on behalf of the board, I just want to say a huge thank you to the Council for their continuing substantial support to this organisation and to the National Lottery and other funders who between them enable us to do what we do. So with that, I'll just pass over to Lee. If he's
Thank you, Stuart. Thank you very much. Thank you also to Caroline and yourself for your involvement over the last 6, 8, 7, 8 years. You've helped make a significant difference. The organisation's different now in terms of resources to what we had at the outset. So thank you very much. Good afternoon, everybody. Before I get going, I'd just like to say, if I start laughing, apologies, because I've got a script in front of me, which I'm going to try and read. And I feel like one of these newscasters, you know, with teleprompter in front of him, except as you'll see, I'm not as good as one of them because I can't look at the camera and read this stuff at the same time. So apologies for that. But right, Fran, first I'd like to thank Fran for and the staff team and the volunteers for what we've done. Fran's outlined what we've been doing over the last year, and it's been a year of two halves. We've made loads of progress in the first 6 months, and we've still done a lot in the last 6 months since COVID. But obviously, it's been different, to put it mildly. what I'm going to do now is I'm going to outline what we plan to do in the future and how we trying to do this thing called make the new normal a better normal. First, I would like to acknowledge that it's been a really tough 6 months for all of us. For the organisation, it's been heartbreaking. It's actually been heartbreaking when I think about it, to not be able to do the face-to-face preventative social activities that we've done for the last 26 years at a time when most probably our 1,500 members have needed us most. We have done stuff, but we've not done the bit where I think we make the biggest impact, which is the face-to-face social activities. So it's been heartbreaking not to be able to do that. However, loneliness and social isolation, they were here before COVID and they'll be here after COVID. And the good news is so will Bea and Owls. We're in a good position and we want to do more. But we've got to remember that of the 10,000 older people experiencing the pandemic in Owls and Bea's catchment area, 86% are not yet members of Bea or Owls. So we also need to remember that 1 in 8 adults in the UK, unfortunately, have not got a single friend. And also that 1 in 5 adults are lonely most of the time. So for some people, the pandemic has been business as usual. For some people, pandemic has improved things. It's actually got better for them in terms of how much contacts they've received. They've had neighbours knocking on the door or two who'd never knocked on the door before. But for most of us, the pandemic has been, it's made things worse. And for instance, I'm wearing the jacket here today of one of our members that died with COVID on his death certificate. I also know a member who is a carer and he's been attacked by his distressed disabled partner. One of the members that I go and visit, doorstep visit, he says to me, says, I think I've got some of that there depression, which is not on his own, is it? So, but the good news is that COVID's actually shone a light on what we've been, why we were set up 26 years ago. And it's also provided further evidence that I think despite our best efforts, and you've heard Fran talk about what we've been doing, we're only scratching the surface, really. We're only just scratching the surface. So how are we going to try and achieve some of these things mentioned in, you know, what we mentioned in the film earlier on, and what the Lord Mayor talked about, and Rachel, our patron Rachel Reeves talked about? How are we going to try and make the normal, the new normal, a better normal? So 3 main ways we're going to try and do this. Firstly, effective and efficient use of existing resources. So our staff are very much aware of those 2 words, effective and efficient. And I make no apologies, you're going to be hearing them even more in the next few years. If you look at our accounts, they show that we have now over £1 million worth of resource each year. That's £1 million. That's made up of staff time, volunteer capacity. We reckon through our 200 volunteers with as much capacity as we have as our biggest staff team ever. We also have 2 minibuses, soon to be 3, and we now have 3 buildings that we have access to. So the good news is that our hard-earned increased resources provide us with greater capacity to provide greater impact. That's there, that's within our power. Second thing we want to do is the pandemic has raised the profile of what we do. Everyone's looking in at what we do. And that there's 72,000 people living in Bramley Elderly Action and Owls catchment area. And that includes 10,000 capable older people. Now, we have a good track record of enlisting local support for local people. And if we're going to increase our impact, we need to further tap into these valuable resources. The third thing we're going to do, and the final thing I'm going to mention, is that with the board, we've produced a really clear, I think, brilliant strategic plan for how we're going to try and increase impact and happiness for local older people. And over the next few months, we're going to really focus on that and how we're going to deliver this plan. So to conclude, the pandemic's provided further evidence that what we do is important. It's provided, in my opinion, further evidence that we need to increase our impact if we're going to do what we all want to do, which is basically make more local older people happy, which is much needed, as we're all aware. So this has been Lee Ingham reporting from his bedroom. I would now like to hand back to Stuart over in the studio.
Thank you, Lee. Okay, that brings us on to item number 10 on the agenda, which is question time. So, anybody got any questions for Lee or Fran primarily? Because I ain't answered any.
We've got a question in chat. Can we see their strategic plan?
You hear that, Lee?
Julie Baden.
Yes, whoever wants to see it's more than welcome. We all need to see it. It's brilliant, and I'd welcome people's views on it. So whoever is asking to see it, yeah, no problem. We'll make sure we get your copy.
Okay. Any other questions? This is not going to turn into a Trappist monk session, is it? Has nobody else got any other questions?
I think Joan is trying to ask a question, Stuart.
Yeah.
Okay, far away.
Where's Joan?
We have to find you first.
You need to put your microphone on, Joan. Technical support, Martin.
You're lost.
No, she's coming on now.
There you go. Now, there you go. Now speak.
Right.
Is that better?
Is that better?
Yes.
Can hear you.
Good. Throughout the meeting so far, we have not heard who shall be taking your place as chair of the board. Usually this has happened, Anna, at an AGM. Is this not being done today or not?
So my apologies, Joan. I should have mentioned it. The board will be asked to nominate Toby as chair of the board with effect from the next meeting. Toby
Right,
Parsons.
thank you. Thank you.
My apologies. I should have mentioned that earlier on. Sorry, Toby. I should have.
Would Toby like to introduce himself?
Yeah, sure. Hello, everybody. I'm Toby, as Stuart said. It's slightly daunting to have to try and follow, well, certainly Stuart and Caroline both stepping down. But as everybody said, that there's a hugely strong staff and volunteer team out there. And I'm sure there's going to be lots of feedback from members as well. So yeah, it feels it's a great time to try and build on what we've done so far. We've heard a lot about some of the challenges today, loneliness coming through hugely, transport money, all those issues there. And at the same point as challenges, yeah, that opportunity to do the building back better that Lee's been talking about. So it's, I guess, as it probably is most exciting but daunting time as well. But yeah, I look forward to chatting more to people over the coming months. Thank you.
Thank you, Toby.
Thank you.
Does that answer your question, Joan?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Any other questions? Have we got any?
Yeah.
Julie, yes, come on.
Can I just ask, is there any research that can be drawn or used from some of the material that we've got going on here? Because I think there's a lot that needs to happen in terms of influencing, particularly central government. I'm just entering the elderly age. I'm busy reading books like This Chair Rocks. I'm part of the Older People Steering Forum. But I do recognise and feel the disempowerment that people have at that sort of age. And it's just if there was any research and examples that we can use from the work at Bramley Elderly Action and at Owls that we could feed into local policies and national policies to say, you know, these are some of the changes and this is some of the evidence, you know, when you recognise people over 60 as having value to contribute to society. This is some of what it delivers, as well as ensuring that we can get the right sort of ins into social care. Having worked at the Department of Health for 20 years, I know that it's the absolute Cinderella service. It didn't shift at all. And something really needs to be done on that front. So it's just sort of the lobbying arm of BEA and Owls, which may be something you're looking at, but I think it's something that will be really, really helpful.
Thank you. Lee, do you want to respond to that briefly?
Yeah, good question. There's some research on its way. So Centre for Ageing Better is the national, like the go-to place in what you're talking about. They've actually got a presence in Leeds at the moment, and they're doing a research study into the work of the neighbourhood network schemes in total. In fact, the person who's was putting together the remit for it had to come and met our board, and I'm on the steering group for it. So we're trying our best to get some proper good information that we can use, basically help understand what we do, and equally as important, other people across the country can learn from what we're doing across the city with Leeds neighbourhood network schemes. So it's happening. It should be available because it's a big piece of work in about, I'd say, 6 months, and we've had the initial feedback already. So it's on its way. Good question. I'll make sure we share it with people. And Leeds Older People's Forum that you're involved with, Julie, they're right on it. So if you talk to people down there, they know what's going on.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Barbara?
It's not actually a question, Stuart.
All right.
They've been doing my shopping for the last 4 or 5 months since I got stuck in Australia and got back. And can I say I've been doing a little bit of ringing round as well. But I think that the Bramley Elderly Action really do need a pat on the back for what they have done during these last 6 months.
Hear, hear.
Thank you very much for that. I'm sure that the staff and the volunteers will appreciate those sentiments. Thank you, Barbara.
That's fine.
Can I also say something, please?
Yep.
It's Sheila Mann. I was asked 26 years ago to set up Bramley Elderly Action by Leeds City Council. And Leeds City Council have supported us ever since that time, both with money, but also with a lot of advice at the very start. But having said that, what I mostly want to say is how proud I am of your organisation. You've done an absolutely fantastic job, and you should all be very proud of yourselves. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sheila. Thank you for those kind words. Do we have any other questions? No? Okay, thank you very much. We move on now to the Community Service Awards, which I'm not sure how you do this virtually, but the Lord Mayor is going to present some Community Service Awards, and here they are. Sorry. She's gone.
The Lord Mayor's still here. So, Lord Mayor, are you aware of this? Because I sent these information.
No, I wasn't.
All right, okay. But if you look on the screen, you can see who you would, if we was at the building, you would be handing over the awards to. Can you read that?
Yes, so I can read it. It's Land Service Award to Jean Lockett for 26 years in service. Jennifer Evans for 26 years also in service. John Ake, Stanley Farrell, and Sally Metho. Have you got this certificate?
You get a...
Have you...
you get an inscribed mug. This is a bit like blankety blank, isn't it?
Isn't it?
So to those who receive, you will get one of these in the very near future.
Can I interrupt there, please, a moment? This is Joan. It's Joan Lockett and it's Sally McHale.
Sorry, Sally McHale, yes.
Yeah. And it's not Jean Lockett, it's Joan.
Yeah. It's written on the screen, John, and it's really small. It's in
I know it is. I was trying to see what it was. Very small, yes.
It'll be John Lockett that gets the our recognition.
Well, thank you very much.
And not Jean. All right, here we go. Yeah, there we go.
Okay. Thank you very much, Madam Mayor.
That's a bit better now. That's bigger, isn't it?
It is. Yes, it's much better.
So it's Jane, Jennifer, John, Stanley, and Sally.
Lovely. There you go. So these mugs are winging their way to you.
Yeah, should we give them all a big clap? To take your get your mute off, and we all do a big clap.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. We move on to the last item, any other business. Is there any other business anyone wants to raise? No? Okay. Thank you very much. So with that, I'm closing.
Just before you go.
Oh, sorry. Go on.
We're 10 minutes into the Challenge Cup final, and these riders haven't scored yet. No, Salford.
Thank you very much, everybody, for your attendance and your forbearance. And with that, I'm closing the AGM. So thank you and good night, as they say.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Night, Pa. Night, Pa. Night, John Boy.
Thank you. Bye.
Everybody.
Bye.
Thank you. Well done, Stuart.
Bye.
1 minute within what we've predicted. So
Oh, well, not bad. Not bad.
Well done, everybody.
Cheers, Lee.
Yeah, good to see you all, everybody. Thank you very much.
You all.
I'm not sure I do.
Wave.
Take my tie off now, then, I presume.